Okay, testing. All right, you can hear me in the room. Claire, can you hear me on the Zoom?
I can hear on Zoom.
Beautiful, and we can hear you. Awesome. The last few times we had like 6 minutes of technical difficulties before we could start, but I think that this time we are good. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 2024 meeting of the City of Revere Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. My name is Joe Gravelisi. I serve as Mayor Keefe's appointee as chair of the board. We'll begin with taking attendance. Joe Gravelisi, chair, I'm present. Claire Anzarillo,
Present.
Anayo Isweki,
Present.
Dean Harris, Lori Manzo,
Present.
and Matt Wolfer mentioned that he may be joining virtually tonight or absent, so I see that he's not here at the moment. Layla Pietri,
Present.
and then Deb Frank mentioned that she couldn't make it due to a work conflict. So we do have a quorum. I do want to start with some brief housekeeping notes. Starting, Claire, you mentioned that we have a conflict with the January meeting. Could you talk through that with us?
Yeah, so the city clerk just gave us a heads up that December to January, I forget the exact dates, but they're going to be doing AV and technical upgrades in the chambers, maybe with Revere TV, not sure, but they asked that we do our meeting virtually. If you've been to City Hall physically recently, you'll note that the City Hall conference room, that little one that we've met in before, is no longer available. They do have this kind of big open air cubicle situation going on behind the chambers, where Human Resources is located. We can meet in there. We'd have to consult with Revere TV if they could hook up all their streaming stuff in that room, but it may just be easier to join on Zoom. I'm happy to meet, in a public space with someone if they don't have computer access, share my computer, but whatever works best for everyone, just for that January meeting as of right now.
I would just propose a motion for ease of simplicity, to make that a virtual meeting. I think that it's really valuable and important to meet in person, but trying to make all the AV and everything work for a site just for one meeting, I think it just makes sense to do that virtually. So I'll make that motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, so we will move the January meeting to virtual. We'll update that. And then I just wanted to note, I don't think we need to make any changes this year, but I also want to just see if anyone flags anything. I know that last year we took December off as our regularly scheduled meeting time was overlapping with Hanukkah. My understanding is that we are not overlapping with any major holidays on December 11th. And I think that it's early enough in the month, that we should still be able to meet, but I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything, major holiday conflicts, events, city hall events. But my understanding is that we should be good to go for December, and I think that we'll have, based on the agenda that we have today, we'll have some things to work on and discuss. So I propose that we keep that on the calendar, and if for some reason something comes up, or more than half of the board is traveling or has holiday obligations or something, then we can adjust as necessary. Okay. Any questions about either of those kind of housekeeping notes? Terrific. Okay, so we'll move on to the treasurer's update.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anayo Isweki. I'm the treasurer of the Affordable Housing Trust Committee. I'm going to provide the current balance as provided to me by Asuta Newton, the Assistant Budget Director. The current balance is $663,530.78. This is due to an increase from, we received some interest payments, which explains the increase from last reading of the budget.
Could you repeat that figure, Anayo?
Sure, $663,530.78.
Any questions for Anayo? Okay, so moving on, some critical program updates, and I think these are some areas, as Lorena is here, if you have additional things to add beyond the top line that I provide, we'd love to have you come up and do that. But first and foremost, housing production plan. So some of you were on the housing production plan working group, in which case you already received this notification. But for members that were not part of that, as well as anyone else in the public that may be interested, the final draft of the housing production plan has been submitted to the Revere City Council for their public hearing, which will be held on November 25th the Monday, November 25th city council meeting. This plan really is the product of many, many hours of public feedback and discussion. Folks from nonprofits, from private sector, long-term residents, newer residents. We had an in-person session over at, I believe it was Revere High School or one of the schools, where people came and put their ideas on whiteboards. Like, it was a really thoughtful, collaborative process. I think those of you that were part of it would agree. And the document, is interesting. I think it compiles some public feedback, that some of which is exactly what you'd expect and some of which might not be. And B, it's very much aligned with a lot of what we talk about and what we do here, on certainly the need to promote affordable housing, on the fact that the number one driver of people away from Revere, when they asked in surveys, what would make you leave the city, is housing costs, right? Inability to purchase or even continue to rent a home they can afford. So with that, please, I'll distribute the plan for everyone to read. And I encourage folks to show up on the 25th for that public hearing and certainly speak in support of this plan. Having it in place will certainly help us as we continue to apply for state funding for projects, and have that as sort of a formal blueprint to backstop some of the work that we're doing around affordable housing development in Revere. Lorraine, anything major related to the HPP that you'd want to add, or?
I guess just to add one benefit of establishing and adopting an HPP is that it establishes a safe harbor, meaning that, for example, like with 40B, any developer can come to the city and propose a dense, affordable housing, mixed-use development. But we, as a city, have more local power and control in these permitting decisions. Although we would like more affordable development projects, it helps us in that sense.
Any questions about the HPP? Okay, great. So definitely encourage folks to check that out and participate. Another major item related to housing that's going to come before the city council won't have its public hearing on the 25th. We're going to ask them to approve it to move forward to the public hearing. So it's kind of a multi-step process to get this done. But we are going to be asking for a public hearing for approval to then submit to the state. So I guess a third step, adopting 2 HDIP zones in Revere. So that's Housing Development Incentive Program, HDIP. So this is a state program run out of the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And we are going to try to take a kind of unique take on it. So the point of this program is to spur development in gateway cities, and certainly Revere, is one of the gateway cities in Massachusetts. There's 2 different tax incentives that are part of the program to try to encourage housing development and housing production. And historically, including in Revere, this has been utilized to spur some market rate housing, particularly in areas where there wasn't necessarily enough demand for it. I think that, as we all know, right, I think in Revere, there is demand and a lot, for market rate housing. We are not in the situation that maybe we were in 20 years ago where nobody wanted to build market housing. We have lots of people that want to build market housing. So part of one of the 2 HDIP districts that we're proposing to the state to adopt, the intention is to utilize it as a tool for affordable housing development and offer the incentives to those who include the 20% threshold of affordable housing as part of the project. This would be a way, I know that we don't have inclusionary zoning in the city, but to try to encourage mixed income projects, particularly focused on the Shirley Ave and Green Street areas, kind of down out over to the beach. So it's bucketed into 2 zones, the Suffolk Downs zone, which will be the normal HDIP process, but then that Shirley Ave kind of Green Street area would encompass the affordability requirements. So a little bit of jargon I think I may have thrown out, so I'll send some of the program description around, but we think this is a really useful tool to ensure that development in that district is going to continue to include affordable units. Well, not continue to afford affordable units, probably start to include affordable units, right? I think If you look at a lot of the new development in that corridor, it's mostly been 100% market rate. So the ability to add in affordable units as part of these is something that the city certainly believes to be important and vital. So the legal process for HDIP is first, there needs to be a public hearing that's advertised for 2 weeks. And we could have just set up a public hearing kind of standalone just for HDIP, but we thought it made sense to make it part of the city council process since they have public hearings anyway, and the city council ultimately needs to also vote to approve it in addition to the public hearing. So we're gonna follow the council schedule. So the council would refer it to a public hearing, I think for December. And then from there, after that public hearing, the council would then ideally, hopefully vote to approve these districts and send them to the state. I know I kind of threw a lot out there, so I just want to see if folks have questions about that program, about that process. But this is another reason for both AHTF members, as well as members of the public who are interested in these issues to come to the city council meeting on November 25th. It's going to be a good one to come and certainly observe, but also to participate in and speak out and support if these are things that are important to you. Anything major that you think I'm missing from that one, Lorena? Yeah. So questions on this program or this process?
Joe, I just want to flag something.
Yes.
I can't see the audience, so I'm sorry if I'm cutting someone off, but we are advertising a lot of Spanish interpretation for our city council meetings and subcommittee meetings. So for the 2 people probably watching at home, we're going to be having Spanish interpretation for most, if not all, of our city council meetings, subcommittees, public hearings, which I think will help, especially with the fear of talking in front of a big group of people who don't speak your language. So that's just something I want to flag.
Thank you for that. Other questions on the HDIP? So this could be a really useful and interesting tool. There aren't a lot of communities that have tried to use these types of tools specifically on affordable development, so we could hopefully be setting an interesting example, in a positive way for the Commonwealth. So moving forward on that, Lorena, if we want to just do a quick update on the first-time homebuyer program, we'll move on to that. The short version is we have a few people that look qualified and they've submitted their materials. We just have a few other things that we need from them to kind of move forward and finish it off. But if you want to check in with the status.
As of today, we've received 11 applicant, and 3 of them have received conditionally awards. It's kind of been a slow burn because to move forward along the process, they'll need a signed purchase and sales agreement. And so those are that's like the final step for those 3 conditional awards that we've made. And then we have 3 other applicants who are in our possibly eligible status, who are working to compile income verification information, mortgage pre-approvals. And so that's where that's at. It's a tough market to buy into this year. Down payments for single-family homes are probably like around $60,000, $70,000. The Federal Reserve had their statistics for the average American savings is about $5,000. I mean, it's just a tough time, but we hope to give applicants 6 months to be able to come up with a purchase and sales agreement. And if at that time they do not, and let's say they go through the process again, and they'll just need to reapply for funding at that point.
Any questions about that program? So it's ongoing. Yep.
Is there a waiting list?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so there's not like a waiting list per se. The way that it's working is that it's the first 5 to fully complete the application and demonstrate their full eligibility, receive conditional awards, and then that conditional award is essentially held until they complete the purchase and sale. From that point, we would know, who has their documentation in and could be deemed eligible. So I I guess we hadn't termed it as a waiting list, but I think it makes sense to think of it in that way, where we would know the order of who submitted their information. So if for whatever reason, one of the first five, became ineligible for whatever reason, or they didn't do a purchase and sale, or they changed their mind and they wanted to withdraw from the program, we would be able to look at the other applicants. So that's a good, I hadn't really thought of it as a waiting list, but that's a good, probably.
Yeah, I said that just so that
Yeah.
if folks were still interested, heard it
Yeah.
late, maybe they would throw their name in a hat. with the
Definitely, and
possible-
I'd say it definitely makes sense to apply, because there are still technically two spots, even though there are a few folks that are going through the process and may get it anyway, they might not. And then also, it's a useful exercise to gather the information anyway, because they may be applying for other first-time home buyer assistance programs like the state. And I think that we're gonna wanna do this again, right? So when we do this again, folks that have already put this information together, filled out an application, they'd have to re-verify their eligibility at that time, but they'd at least have a jump start on it. So I definitely would encourage people to do that if they remain interested in applying. Questions on that program?
They have a deadline for this time?
So it's until funds are exhausted.
Yeah, till funds are exhausted. But we've been telling folks, since we don't have a waiting list, it's just that the expectation is that there are other people moving along with the process, and whoever finishes their complete application with the purchase and sales agreement, it's like first come, first serve.
Other questions, comments, feedback related to first-time homebuyer? Great. I think we had a pretty longer conversation about this last month to talk about how we might want to shift it moving forward, or if we just repeat it exactly as it is. So continue to think on that, as we kind of move through. It's great to see the success of the program. It's great to see that we're going to be able to award it to 5 folks. But as we discussed, a lot of the challenges related to it are things that are sort of outside of our control. The interest rates and high, expensive down payments right now. It's a challenging time, but it'll be great to be able to help out, 5 folks and help them be able to do that here in the city. So, moving on. So we've been discussing the disposition of the city-owned and tax title properties. This is something that we are going to push back to December before submitting to the city council, due to the fact that we have both the HDIP and the housing production plan to go forth. Want to make sure that we're spacing these things out a little bit, not sending too much to the council at the same time. I thought this would be a good time. We talked a little bit last month about some of the balancing act of, we have these lots, and it's sort of this question of, do we get bids to come in that are specifically to build, affordable housing? Do we want to, look at people that would be interested in coming in and building a market rate home and using the proceeds to fund what we're doing, at the trust fund? Do we want to do a mix of both? I would appreciate if people have had a chance to think through their thoughts on kind of their feedback. Like, I'm here, I'll be part of the evaluation process, and Lorena, when people submit responses to the RFP once it goes out. So really wanted to just get folks' thoughts on that, if they've had a chance to kind of think further. Lorena, I don't know if you want to add anything to as to kind of how that process is moving forward on our end.
I actually don't have an update.
Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of still, that's a bit medium burner, not back burner, but those other items kind of came first on the agenda, but we're going to continue to move forward on this one, so. Any questions, thoughts, feedback on that piece of it? So I will say, and I'd kind of be curious as to people's thoughts then, my ideal bid, would be someone that wanted to, it would be a low bid, but they would be then taking on the cost of doing subsidized homeownership units. I think that if we had that, I think that would be what I would kind of prefer to see, come in. I think we want to see what the process is and make sure that any bidders are financially capable and have done these types of projects before or demonstrated the capacity to do them. But I think that it's kind of a rare opportunity to use these types of parcels. We're certainly never going to, as a trust, be able to afford to kind of like purchase a parcel and do a new build of a home for affordable home ownership on it. That would be just way beyond our capacity financially. If you remember, we've talked about maybe like purchasing older properties that are probably need a lot of repairs and need a lot of work and are a little bit kind of need some TLC. So the chance to do sort of a new build as an affordable home ownership project, I would probably prefer that. But I certainly, I'm open to different types of bids that come in, but wanted to just see if people had agreed with that, conditionally agreed, had questions, thoughts. And do I need to clarify for anyone what I'm talking about this RFP process? Chatty. That's good. No, I think we're all generally aligned and on the same page, so I think that that's helpful. It's another, in a line of things that we hope to really see some action on by the end of the year, make it a really successful year for us, which is great. Other updates from the planning and community development side on other things that, even if they're not related necessarily to these AHTF items, but just things you'd want to update us on? No? And then, is there any update on the Lee's Trailer Park project since the last meeting? No? Okay. Yeah, things are just continuing at pace with that. Okay. So other questions about any of these? It seems like we're all kind of aligned on everything, which is helpful, but not the best TV for our TV viewers. That's okay. Great. So any other items to share, late additions to the agenda or comments? No? Okay, then my main thing that I would just want to leave us with then and reiterate is that meeting coming up on the 25th, it's not a requirement for people to attend, but I really strongly encourage people to do so. I believe the subcommittees will start at 5, but I'll confirm that. Claire would probably know for sure. I don't see her butting in, so. But I will get around to everyone that calendar, as well as the housing production plan draft, and then also the information about the HDIP program if you want to do some further reading on it, as we'd really appreciate everyone's advocacy for those two projects moving forward. So, yep.
I just wanted to give you all an update on the Complete Neighborhood Streets Initiative, Complete Neighborhoods Program with MHP, with Christine Medor and Laura Christopher that we were working on in the Shirley Ave neighborhood with helping small businesses, owners who are interested in building housing, be able to do pre-development and site feasibility. So we're planning to shift the scope of work to, just because Laura Christopher is going on maternal leave, to shift the scope to looking at our comprehensive rezoning throughout the city, but kind of tie it back to Shirley Ave, because the grant was basically what it was for, and thinking about how we can modify our zoning to align with existing conditions, with the built form, with reducing lot sizes, lot frontage, reducing parking, minimum requirements, and that these are goals also coming out of the HPP as well. And so that's what we're looking to do with MHP now.
The only place around the city is just the Shirley Ave.
Yeah, when we originally applied for the grant last year, the focus was on Shirley Ave. But it's basically an initiative to help spur affordable housing development. And we thought like Shirley Ave would be a good place to start because it's like basically a complete neighborhood. There's MBTA serviced around that neighborhood. There's a lot more market rate housing going up, but none of it's affordable.
So it dovetails nicely with the HDIP, for that reason, and that's one reason why Laura, Christopher, and I have been two ships passing in the night, but we're gonna connect, and it'll be great to have her come to the next meeting if she's available to come and talk about that initiative in ways that it aligns with some of what we're doing, so, I'm gonna invite her to the next, meeting, and I think that would be really helpful. Great. Other questions on that? No? All right, then I think we had a tidy one today, so unless anyone has anything, any questions, comments from those in attendance? All right, great. Well, appreciate you all being here. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second. Actually, before I move that forward, I'll also want to send our best to Matt's dog. That was a very adorable picture of the dog that was sent out. If you can hear us, Matt, thank you for the picture, but then also send a picture of her in full recovery mode as well when she's running around, because she's very cute.
Will do. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Okay, so motion to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, we'll see you in about 4 weeks.